Okay, so you want to own a car dealership. Picture it. A sea of glass and steel just off the highway, your name up on a sign 50 feet in the air, lit up so it's the first thing people see when they take the exit. Rows of brand new SUVs lined up like soldiers, sunlight bouncing off the windshields, little triangular flags snapping in the wind. Inside, the showroom is cool and quiet, smelling of new leather and fresh coffee. A young couple runs their hand along the hood of a car they've been dreaming about for 2 years. Your salespeople work the floor in crisp shirts. Somewhere in the back, a service bay hums along, and every 30 minutes another deal closes and another set of keys slides across the desk. At the end of the month, the manufacturer sends you a bonus check just for hitting your numbers. You drive home in whatever you want, because the whole lot is technically yours. You are the king of a small, shining kingdom made of cars. That's the picture. That's what the sign, the commercials, and every guy in a blazer at the auto show are selling you. Here's the problem. Almost none of that is where the money is. The new cars on that beautiful lot, you probably don't own a single one of them. The couple buying their dream car, you'll make more money on the paperwork than the vehicle. And that 50-foot sign, that gleaming showroom the manufacturer made you build, that wasn't your idea, and it may have cost you $3, $5, $10 million that you'll spend the next decade trying to earn back. The dealership business quietly destroys people who walk in thinking it's about selling cars. Some go broke on interest they didn't understand. Some get squeezed out by the manufacturer they thought was their partner. And some, as you'll see later, end up in federal prison for trying to paper over the exact trap I'm about to explain. Because here's the reframe, and I want you to sit with it. A car dealership is not really a car-selling business. It's a finance company and a repair shop that happens to keep a showroom full of cars out front to bring people in the door. Read that again. By the end of this, you'll understand exactly where a dealership's money actually comes from, why the shiniest part of the business is the least profitable, why you don't own your own inventory, how a single bad quarter of interest rates can bleed a healthy store dry, and why the smartest, wealthiest dealers in America barely think about the cars at all. You'll understand the machine underneath the machine. But before we talk about money, we need to talk about what a car dealership actually is, because that phrase is hiding at least 4 completely different businesses, and people constantly confuse them. The first kind is the new car franchise dealership. This is the one with the manufacturer's name on the building: Toyota, Ford, Honda, Chevrolet. Here's the thing most people don't realize. You can't just decide to sell new Toyotas. You have to be granted a franchise by the manufacturer, the same way someone is granted a McDonald's. The automaker controls how many dealers exist, where they're located, and what the building has to look like. That franchise is worth a fortune, and it's also a leash. The second kind is the independent used car dealership. No manufacturer, no franchise, no leash. You buy used cars at auction or on trade, you mark them up, you sell them. Much cheaper to start, much smaller, and a completely different animal financially. The third kind is what the industry calls buy here, pay here, BHPH. These are the lots that sell older, cheaper cars to people with bad credit and, crucially, lend them the money in-house. They're not really in the car business at all. They're in the subprime lending business, and the car is just the collateral. Some of them make brutal, extraordinary margins. And the fourth kind is the mega group, the publicly traded giants like AutoNation, Penske, Lithia, Group 1, Sonic. These companies own hundreds of rooftops across dozens of brands, and they play the game on a completely different level, which we'll get to at the end because that's where the real lesson lives. For most of this, we're going to focus on the one you're picturing, the single new car franchise dealership, the one with the sign and the flags. Because that's the dream, and that's where the trap is best hidden. So let's talk about getting in. The biggest, most obvious cost is buying the store. And here's where the numbers get wild, because a dealership has 2 prices stacked on top of each other, and beginners only ever see the first one. The first price is everything physical and financial: the land, the building, and the cars. A modern franchise dealership sits on a huge, expensive parcel of commercial real estate right on a main road that alone can run several $1 million. The building, if you're constructing to the manufacturer's specifications, commonly runs anywhere from $3 to over $20 million depending on brand and market. And then there's the inventory sitting on the lot, which for a busy store can easily be 5, 10, $15 million worth of vehicles at any given moment. But the second price is the one nobody outside the industry understands. It's called blue sky. Blue sky is what you pay for the business itself, the goodwill, the reputation, the right to hold that franchise, the future profits. And it's not priced in dollars. It's priced as a multiple of the store's annual profit. According to firms that broker these deals, like the Hague Report and Kerrigan Advisors, blue sky multiples typically run anywhere from around 3 times earnings for a struggling domestic brand up to 8 or 9 times earnings for a hot import like Toyota, Honda, or Lexus. So a store making $4 million a year in profit might have a blue sky price of $20, $30 million, on top of the land, the building, and the cars. Add it all up and buying a healthy new car franchise can easily be a $20, $40, $60 million transaction. A used car lot, by contrast, you might open for a few $100,000. And here's the lesson buried in those numbers, the one that trips up almost everyone. The price of the dealership and the profitability of the dealership are two completely different numbers. You can pay top dollar for a beautiful store and still watch it lose money, because what you bought was the volume, not the margin. High revenue, thin profit. Keep that distinction in your head. It's going to come back. Okay, so let's say you've bought in. You'd think the spending is over. It's just beginning. Now come the costs nobody puts in the brochure. First, there's the manufacturer's facility requirements. The industry calls these image programs. The automaker doesn't just let you sell their cars out of any building. They dictate the design. The tile, the lighting, the specific brand of furniture, the exact shade of the exterior panels. And every few years, they update the standard and encourage you to renovate, a renovation that can run into the millions. Dealers have publicly complained for years, through their association, that these forced upgrades can cost a store several $1 million with a very fuzzy return. You don't really get a choice. Refuse, and your relationship with the mothership gets cold fast. Second, there's floor plan financing, and this is so important we're going to come back to it in a big way. For now, just know this. The cars on your lot are bought with borrowed money, and you pay interest on that loan every single day the car sits there unsold. Third, there's staffing, and it's heavier than you think. A full franchise store isn't a used lot with 3 guys. You've got salespeople, a finance manager, a service manager, service advisors, certified technicians, parts staff, a controller, office and title clerks, lot porters, detailers. A mid-sized dealership can employ 60, 80, over 100 people. Payroll is routinely one of the 2 largest expenses in the entire operation. Fourth, there's the software and the compliance and the insurance, the boring stuff that bleeds you quietly. The dealer management system, the software that runs the whole store, is a significant recurring cost. Garage liability insurance, property insurance, and dealer open lot coverage to insure all that inventory against hail and theft. In hail-prone states, that number is eye-watering. Plus advertising, which for a franchise store commonly runs a few $100s per car sold, month after month. So before you sell a single car, before a single customer walks in, before a single test drive, you are already carrying millions in real estate, millions in inventory debt, and a payroll of dozens. The lot looks like an asset. Financially, on day one, it's mostly a set of bills with a countdown timer. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This is the mechanism at the center of the whole business, and I need you to slow down with me, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You do not own the cars on your lot. I mean that almost literally. When new vehicles arrive from the manufacturer, you don't pay cash for them. You buy them using a special revolving loan called the floor plan, often provided by the manufacturer's own finance arm, like Ford Motor Credit or GM Financial, or by a bank. The lender pays the factory. The car goes on your lot. And from that moment, you owe the lender the full wholesale price of that vehicle, plus interest that accrues every day it sits there. So picture your lot again, all those beautiful cars in neat rows. Now picture a little meter on the windshield of each one, ticking upward, day and night, whether it's sunny or raining, whether anyone comes to look at it or not. That's floor plan interest. The industry has a grim little phrase for a car that sits too long: it gets old. An aging unit is quietly eating its own profit through interest before it's ever sold. This changes everything about how the business actually works. It means your enemy isn't really a rival dealer down the street. Your enemy is time. Your enemy is the car that won't move. A dealership doesn't get rich by owning cars. It gets rich by turning cars over fast enough to outrun the interest meter. You are not a collector. You are a conveyor belt. And it gets sharper. Because when you finally sell that shiny new car, the gross profit on the vehicle itself is often shockingly thin. On many new cars, the margin between what the dealer owes and what the customer pays is only a few percent, sometimes just a few $100s once you account for discounts and the interest you already burned. Some new cars are sold at essentially break-even, or even a small loss, just to move the metal and hit a manufacturer bonus target. So let that land for a moment. The single most visible, most expensive, most glamorous thing in the entire business, selling a brand new car off the showroom floor, is one of the least profitable things the dealership does. That's not the business. That's the bait. So where does the money actually come from? It comes in layers, and once you name them, the whole thing snaps into focus. The first layer is new vehicle sales. High volume, low margin. This is the flag-waving, commercial-airing, foot traffic driving front end. It generates enormous revenue and thin profit. But it does one priceless thing. It fills the parking lot with customers. Remember that. It matters later. The second layer is used vehicle sales. Here the margins are usually better, because there's no fixed MSRP and no manufacturer breathing down your neck on price. A well-run used car operation, especially with certified pre-owned cars, is often more profitable per unit than new. And every trade-in a customer hands you on a new car deal becomes tomorrow's used inventory. The layers feed each other. The third layer, and this is where the record scratches for most people, is F&I, finance and insurance. This is the little office you get walked into after you've agreed on the price of the car, where a very good-natured person offers you financing and a menu of add-ons. Here's how it works. When the dealership arranges your loan, it can mark up the interest rate a bit above what the bank actually requires, and it keeps a slice of that difference. The industry calls it reserve. On top of that, they sell you extended service contracts, gap coverage that pays off your loan if the car is totaled, tire and wheel protection, paint protection, and so on. Each one carries a fat margin. Industry data has long shown dealers earning something in the neighborhood of $2,000, sometimes more, in combined finance and insurance profit on a single vehicle. That's frequently more than the profit on the car itself. The fourth layer is the quiet giant of the entire operation, and it's the one customers never think about: fixed operations. That's the service department and the parts department, the repair bays out back and the shelves of components behind the counter. This is the most stable, highest margin, most recession-resistant part of the whole business. Labor is billed at a healthy hourly rate, parts carry strong markups, and unlike car sales, people need their cars fixed whether the economy is booming or crashing. The industry has a benchmark for a truly healthy store called 100% service absorption. It means the profit from fixed operations alone covers 100% of the entire dealership's overhead. Rent, salaries, utilities, everything. When a store hits that, every dollar the sales floor makes is gravy. Think about what that means. The best dealers run the sales floor almost like a marketing department whose real job is to put cars into the community, cars that will come back, again and again, for oil changes, brakes, tires, and warranty work for the next 10 years. The showroom sells the car once. The service bay sells to that same car forever. And there's a fifth, invisible layer, the manufacturer's own money. There's holdback, typically around 2 to 3% of the vehicle's sticker price, that the factory quietly refunds to the dealer. There are volume bonuses and what the industry calls stair-step incentives. Hit a sales target and unlock a bigger per-car bonus, sometimes retroactively on every car you sold that month. For a lot of stores, these factory payments are the difference between a profitable year and a losing one. You're not just selling cars to customers. You're hitting quotas for the manufacturer and getting paid to do it. So that's how money comes in. Now let's talk about how it leaks out, because the recurring bleed is relentless. Payroll never stops. Those dozens of employees get paid whether it's a busy Saturday or a dead Tuesday in February. The floor plan interest meter, as we said, runs every day. Property taxes on several acres of prime commercial real estate are enormous. Utilities to light a giant lot and heat a giant building. Insurance on all of it. Advertising, month after month. Software subscriptions. Repairs to the building. And the manufacturer's periodic demand that you renovate. According to NADA, the National Automobile Dealers Association, the average franchise new car dealership in the U.S. does enormous total sales, recently on the order of $70+ million a year, and yet nets only a low single-digit percentage of that as pre-tax profit. High revenue, thin margin. Sound familiar? It's the same lesson from the purchase price, showing up again in the operations. That thin margin is exactly why the risk in this business is so brutal, and why we now have to talk about volatility. Because a business that keeps only 2 or 3 cents of profit on every dollar has almost no cushion. And this business sits on top of two of the most volatile forces in the whole economy, interest rates and consumer confidence. Here's the mechanism. When interest rates rise, two things happen at once, and they both hit you. First, your customers' monthly payments go up, so fewer of them can afford a car, so your sales slow down. Second, your own floor plan loan, the money financing every car on your lot, gets more expensive at the exact same time. So your revenue falls and your carrying costs rise, simultaneously. The meter on every windshield spins faster while fewer people walk through the door to stop it. That's not a coincidence. That's the structure of the business turning against you. And then there's the manufacturer risk. Remember that franchise is a leash. The automaker can flood you with cars you didn't order and pressure you to move them. They can change the incentive rules mid-game. In the worst case, and this actually happened, they can decide you don't get to exist anymore. During the 2008 and 2009 financial crisis, as General Motors and Chrysler went through bankruptcy, they terminated well over 1,000 dealer franchises. Chrysler alone moved to cut around 789 dealers, and GM targeted well over 1,000 more. People who had put their life savings and their family name into a store were told, in a letter, that the franchise was gone. Not because they were bad operators. Because the mothership was drowning and needed to shrink. That's the leash tightening. So new cars are the bait, floor plan is the trap, service is the treasure, and interest rates and the manufacturer are the two forces that can break the whole thing. Which brings us to the story I promised you. Because there's no better way to understand the floor plan trap than to watch it swallow someone whole. Let me tell you about Rager Dykes. Out in Lubbock, Texas, two men, Bart Rager and Rick Dykes, built one of the biggest auto groups in West Texas. Rager Dykes Auto Group. Through the 2010s they expanded aggressively, opening multiple rooftops across the region, mostly built around the Ford franchise. They were local celebrities. Big personalities, big advertising, big ambitions. Bart Rager was the hard-charging motivational frontman. Rick Dykes ran the operational side. For a while, it looked like exactly the shining kingdom we described at the start. Rows of trucks, name on the buildings, the whole thing. But underneath, the interest meter was winning. Here's what investigators later laid out. To keep the empire running and growing, the group started playing games with the floor plan. Remember, when you sell a floor-planned car, you're supposed to immediately pay the lender back the wholesale amount you borrowed for it. The industry term for what happens when you don't is chilling in its simplicity, selling the car out of trust. You've sold the collateral, you've pocketed the cash, but you haven't repaid the loan. The lender still thinks that car is sitting on your lot, backing the debt. It isn't. It's gone. According to the U.S. Department of Justice and the lawsuit filed by Ford Motor Credit, Rager Dykes did this on a massive scale, along with check kiting, shuffling money between accounts to create the illusion of funds that weren't there, and creating fake financing records to draw down money on cars that had already been sold or never existed the way the paperwork claimed. It was a shell game, and every day it required a bigger and bigger illusion to keep the previous day's hole covered. The floor plan hole they dug ran into the tens of millions of dollars. In the summer of 2018, it collapsed. Ford Motor Credit uncovered the scheme, and the auto group filed for bankruptcy. Thousands of transactions unraveled. And the ending is not a metaphor. Several employees pleaded guilty to floor plan fraud. Bart Rager was convicted by a federal jury for taking millions in bank loan proceeds under false pretenses and was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. An empire built on flags and trucks and big personalities, gone, because the fundamental physics of the business, you don't own your inventory, and the meter never stops, finally came due all at once. Now, I'm not telling you that to say every dealer is a crook. The overwhelming majority run clean, careful stores. I'm telling you this because Rager Dykes is what the floor plan trap looks like when it finally closes. It's not usually one dramatic theft. It's a slow squeeze, cars aging on the lot, interest compounding, a thin margin getting thinner, and the temptation, when you're underwater, to sell just one more car out of trust and promise yourself you'll cover it next month. The mechanism we spent all that time explaining? That's the exact mechanism that put a man in prison. So if the cars barely make money, and the trap is this dangerous, why do sophisticated people keep buying dealerships? Why are billionaires like the ones behind Penske and Lithia and AutoNation building empires of them? Because they're not really playing the game you think they're playing. This is the deeper game. Here's the first thing the smart money understands. The real long-term wealth in a dealership often isn't in the dealership at all. It's under it. It's the land. A dealership sits on several acres of prime commercial real estate on a major road, and savvy owners frequently structure the deal so they personally own that land and lease it back to the dealership business. The dealership pays rent, a reliable income stream, and over decades, the real estate itself quietly appreciates into a fortune. If the car business has a rough decade, the land is still there, still valuable, maybe worth more than the whole operation was. The cars come and go. The dirt stays. The second thing they understand is the blue sky and the roll-up. Remember blue sky, that multiple of earnings price for the franchise itself? When you own one store, you're a small business person. When you own 40 stores across a dozen brands, you're a different creature entirely. You can spread risk across regions and brands, so a bad year for trucks in Texas is offset by a good year for imports in California. You can negotiate better floor plan rates. You can centralize the back office. And the whole collection becomes a big, sellable financial asset. The public giants grew precisely by buying up family stores one at a time and stacking their blue sky into a mountain. The third thing is the finance and service annuity we already uncovered. Wealthy operators obsess over fixed operations and F&I, the boring, stable, high-margin layers, because those are what survive a recession. When new car sales crater, people still fix their cars, and the service bays hum right through the downturn. The sophisticated owner treats the sales floor as customer acquisition and the service drive as the recurring revenue machine. Same building. Completely different mental model than the guy who thinks he's just selling cars. And there are tax and accounting advantages layered on top. Inventory accounting methods, depreciation on all that real estate and equipment, the ability to reinvest profits into more property. The wealthy dealer isn't lying awake thinking about how many Camrys moved on Saturday. They're thinking about real estate appreciation, franchise value, and stable service income. The cars are the engine that generates the customers. The wealth is built out of everything around the cars. So let's put real numbers on it, the way you'd actually live it. Let's model a realistic scenario for a single mid-size new car franchise store. Not a promise, just an honest sketch of how the two faces of this business look. A good year. Interest rates are moderate, people feel confident, credit is easy. Cars turn fast, they're barely aging on the lot, so the floor plan meter stays quiet. You're moving strong volume of new and used, and even though each new car makes only a little, the sheer number adds up. The F&I office is humming, adding a couple $1,000s of high-margin profit to most deals. The service bays are packed and, on a good year, they're covering most or all of your overhead by themselves. You hit your manufacturer volume targets, so the stair-step bonuses and holdback checks roll in on top. On 70+ million in total sales, you clear a few million in pre-tax profit. The land under you ticked up in value. It feels, honestly, like the dream on the sign. It feels easy. Now, the bad year. Rates spike. Suddenly your customers' monthly payments jump, and the showroom goes quiet. Foot traffic drops off a cliff. But the cars keep arriving from the factory, and now they sit. And sit. The floor plan meter, which was a whisper last year, is now a roar, Every unsold unit is eating interest at a higher rate than before on a bigger, older inventory than you wanted. You're discounting new cars just to break even to keep the metal moving. F&I income falls because fewer deals are happening and lenders have tightened up. Your fixed costs, payroll for 80 people, property taxes, insurance, that renovation the manufacturer just mandated, none of it went down. Service is the one thing holding you up, quietly covering the overhead while the front end bleeds. That thin 2 or 3% margin from the good year? It's gone, and you're staring at a loss, watching your cash reserves drain to feed the interest meter. And you understand, suddenly and completely, exactly how a Rager Dykes begins, not with a villain, but with an honest operator underwater, tempted to sell just one more car out of trust. Same lot, same sign, same 50-foot letters lit up over the highway. Two completely different businesses, separated by nothing more than the direction of interest rates and the speed of the conveyor belt. So go back to that opening image. You, standing in the cool quiet of the showroom, watching sunlight bounce off a row of brand new cars, feeling like the king of a small shining kingdom made of steel and glass. It's a real feeling, and the cars are real. But now you know what's underneath them. You know there's a meter ticking on every windshield. You know the profit isn't in the gleaming machine the customer drives off in, it's in the loan they signed, and the oil changes they'll come back for, and the acres of dirt the whole thing is standing on. You know the manufacturer whose name is on your sign can be a partner or a leash, depending on the year. The cars were never the business. The cars are the crowd. They bring the people, and so the real machine, the finance office, the service drive, the real estate, the slow compounding of a franchise's value, can quietly do its work in the background, year after year, long after the flag stops snapping in the wind. Selling cars isn't really the business. Owning the meter is.